What is going on, everyone? We got 2 hours until kickoff at SoFi Stadium, the Rams and the 49ers, and we are happy to be bringing it to you live here on 95.7 The Game. This is the kickoff show. Evan Giddings, Low Neal, Lorenzo, what's going on, man? How you feeling today, baby?
Man, I'm feeling legendary. Absolutely excited about today because the Niners and the Rams, that's always a great game, and it seems like the Niners have had their number, but I'm excited about it. Can't wait to see it.
Well, especially coming off of week one, right? We got two undefeated teams. The 49ers going to Pittsburgh last week. They blow the doors off the Steelers. The Rams, meanwhile, kind of caught everyone's eyes because of what they did last week in Seattle. And I think before we, of course, dig into the X's and O's, we got John Dickinson coming up in an hour at 12 o'clock, live from SoFi Stadium. We got our predictions coming your way. We want you to chime in, whether it's on YouTube, hello, powered by First North Cal Credit Union, 888-957-9570 on the Xfinity mobile text line. We want you to chime in all show. Let us know what you're feeling today for the 49ers and the Rams, because we got 2 hours to get you set for kickoff. But, Lo, I want to start with what we saw in week one, specifically from the 49ers. And for me, it was a team that has absolutely earned and was advertised as a Super Bowl contender, because that's what you expect from a team that has long-term, big aspirations in a season, is to go on the road and not only win, but win in a fashion that was absolutely dominant in all three phases.
I tell you what, I thought that they could possibly was going to win the game, but I didn't think that they would win in that fashion. No way did I think they're going to go into Three Rivers or whatever you want in Heinz Field. No, I did not think that the 49ers would go on the road, Nicky Bosa not being present, not practicing really, step on the field, play as well as he did. I did not think you would beat a Steeler, a Mike Tomlin's team, the way that you did. You handled them, you beat them from pillar to post. The way that the game transpired was just shocking, and I think it was one of the biggest wins of the first week. And one of them. I'm not saying the biggest, because I think if you look at the Giants and Dallas, I think Cowboys, what they did was probably even greater. And then you got to also look at the Rams. So just looking at week one and thinking about the kind of matchup this was going to be, looking at this, the Steelers, what they've done at that place, and the Niners having to travel 2 time zones to go out there and play against a physical team in the Steelers and absolutely dominate in run game, passing game. They dictated tempo, everything. I did not see that coming.
Well, and now it marks a 6-0 start for Brock Purdy, who's going up against another quality, some say potential Hall of Fame quarterback in Matthew Stafford. But a 6-0 start in the regular season for Purdy. He has thrown for at least 200 yards in all of them. He has thrown for at least 2 or more touchdowns in all of them. And the 2 last week went to a guy that you and I expect a lot from this season, Brandon Ayuk, because he was putting Patrick Peterson on the turf. He was going left. He was going right. He was going downfield. He was catching short routes. And if that offense, of course, with Christian McCaffrey, who had a big game last year against the Rams, we can get into that. But if he goes and does his thing on the ground, along with what Ayuk can provide on the outside, not to say Deebo Samuel and George Kittle aren't important, but the fact that those guys were not even as intimately involved in the game plan of a 30-13 waxing last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, that to me spells an offense that can absolutely compete with the best, and that may have looked even more impressive than Dallas's offense because of their defense in that 40-0 shutout.
Oh, no question. When you talk about the guys that you just mentioned, Ayuk is, if you look at the Niners roster and you think about Ayuk as far as the receiver position, he's the purest receiver as far as being able to run routes, body control, body movements, getting in and out of breaks. He is that receiver, that possession receiver. Deebo's that big play guy, the physical guy. You can put him in the backfield, line him up at slot, do all these things that Deebo can do. But as far as just pure route running and mismatch, you look at Ayuk, what he brings to the table. But you know what Deebo is capable. He's capable of huge games. We've seen him. But also when you're talking about a guy like Kittle, hey, diddle, I like to say Kittle down the middle. You just talked about a Kittle that where was he at? And when you can win like that, with not getting Kittle involved, he did a great job in the blocking game, in the run game. That's who Kittle is. But when you think about his bravado in the passing game, what he's too fast for linebackers, he's too physical for safeties. Kittle was one of the better premier tight ends in the league. And they did not have to use him in a hostile environment against one of the better defenses. And Kittle you didn't feel his presence as far as a contribution in catching the ball. Yes, you felt his presence blocking.
And if we're talking about the week one performances, to me, even though, yes, Dallas had maybe the most dominant day because of that defense.
Yes.
I want to get into some things that we thought were for real about week one. Dallas's defense absolutely there. But to me, Lo, I think you could make the argument that San Francisco had the most complete week one performance because as much as a lot of people did expect Brock Purdy to be good, he was coming off of elbow surgery this offseason. Nick Bosa signed his extension a couple of days before. Though he didn't have a sack, he was responsible for that pressure rate that was through the roof, opening things for Drake Jackson, who had 3 sacks. Javon Hargrave made his welcome to San Francisco with the sack on the road against his old former team in the Steelers. And I just think that the defense overall, Fred Warner was thumping Najee Harris. Talanoa Hufanga ended up with an interception that he pitched for. Well, it was a pitch for a lateral. It wasn't exactly lateral. But that defense was so good. And then also the special teams. What else did we have a question about? The newest third-round rookie kicker, Jake Moody, who looked good as well. So although Dallas had the 40-0 shutout on the road against a decent Giants team, I think better than they showed for sure. To me, the 49ers as a whole had the most complete performance last week.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but I'll just say be careful because the Giants was a team that made the playoffs last year. The Steelers didn't. But you knew the Steelers were going to come back, and you thought, okay, let's talk about a position that you just alluded to, and Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is what he's done is coming back from Tommy John surgery, and the way in which he's performed, ahead of schedule, on time, way ahead of schedule, and to come out and perform cool, calm, and collective like he always does, hasn't lost a game. That's the X factor that says yes to me, just like you're talking about. Because you look at the quarterback position, the Steelers, they didn't have one. We talked last week and saying, what is going to be the key? And if you have a quarterback that's going to turn the ball over, you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, how many turnovers a quarterback, 2 turnovers, 2 interceptions, not taking care of the ball, fumble. When you do that, you cannot beat good teams. Usually better teams are going to win those matchups. Of all things being equal, the turnover factor is big. And when you see Purdy, the way he executes and the way that he orchestrates the offense, getting them in and out of the huddle, operates with pace, making sure his guys are lined up, doesn't make bad decisions, throw the ball away when he has to, live to fight on another day. A lot of quarterbacks don't do that. They throw into double and triple coverage. They turn a bad play into a worse play instead of just saying, I'm going to eat it. Brock Purdy doesn't do that. So, yes, when you talk about the collective and team, who do I think and who do you like, the first week one, I do think that the Niners had the most complete. Because we got Philadelphia on the line. They didn't look that well. Could have lost to a Patriot team that people don't think that are that good. So when you think about the NFC now, but when you and I talked about it, we said, hey, Dallas, Philadelphia, and the Niners. All 3 of those teams, you're probably not going to change after week one. Maybe you want to throw Detroit back a little bit further down. But if you look at what we've seen thus far, those 3 teams played well. But yes, if you talk about all-around performance, you got to give the edge to the Niners.
And in week 2, to start it off, the Eagles look maybe a little bit shaky against the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings nearly come back in that game despite turning over a couple of times. But the Eagles are 2-0, and that's where the Niners want to be. Right now, you are looking at that team in Dallas as teams that you're competing for that 1 seed. You want that home field advantage. You want that bye heading into the playoffs.
Sure. The
only thing that eluded the San Francisco 49ers last season and maybe could have been the difference if Brock Purdy did not get hurt, we'll find out. So, staying with the pack, keeping the pace. That's what this season is about. And right now in week 2, it's all about the Rams. Evan Giddings and Lorenzo Neal with you here on the Kickoff Show. We're taking you up until 1:05 kickoff at SoFi Stadium. John Dickinson is going to join us in about an hour at 12, has a live look of what potentially could be more of a home game than a road game for the 49ers because, we've seen throughout the last couple of years since the Rams moved into that brand new shiny building in L.A., there's been a lot of red and gold down there traveling to SoCal.
No question. The Niners, they travel well, especially when it goes to Southern California, a 5-hour drive, a 45-minute flight.
Yeah.
The Niners, they travel well. They take that stadium over. And there's a lot of just Niner fans down in Southern California. So, yes, it's going to be electrifying in that stadium. That Niner fans are going to travel well. But I can't wait to see just the matchup. But, yeah, I think that's going to be a sea of red.
And look, if we're talking about the Rams, too, because as much as I thought the Niners were wholly impressive, it was something that didn't necessarily, to me, come out of left field because I think they had the potential to do that to Pittsburgh. As much as I thought it would be a closer game, I did think the Niners would win, and I thought they'd be able to separate in the second half. They ended up doing it right out of the gates. Pittsburgh didn't have a first down until, I think, 2 minutes left in the first half. But what the Rams did absolutely shocked me.
Yeah.
because not only to go into a hostile environment like Seattle, but that second half defensive performance by the Los Angeles Rams, to me, was arguably one of the more impressive performances from a group last week, because they allowed one first down to a Geno Smith-led offense that last year was much better than people gave it credit for. Very efficient and effective with three wide receivers, Metcalf, Lockett, now Smith, Jackson-Jigba out of Ohio State. And they held them to about 1 yard per play in the second half. And that's why, as much as I do think, and we'll get into it, as much as I think the Niners absolutely have an advantage and should be favored and should walk away with a win in this game, this is a Rams team that put people on notice to say, you can't look past us.
You better not, because they went in there and beat a Geno-led team that's played pretty well, a team that, was right there by the brink of the playoffs. So they played a good Seattle team that people thinking, hey, Seattle now, these younger guys, because it was a young team, they've been drafting well, and you say, wow, this Seattle team is going to be a threat this year. And the way that the Rams went in there, they're one of the youngest teams in the NFL, and went in there, the way that they played and handled a business, I think that it was just as big as a win as the Niners. If you ask, if what you're saying is you think that the Rams win was bigger than the Niners, I'm not saying bigger, but it was more, they put on, in your opinion, they seemed to play a better team, or you thought you gave more of an edge to Seattle than you did to the Steelers?
I expected Seattle to win that game because, and I think this is where the Rams might be able to not catch the Niners off balance, but I think they're going to have somewhat of an advantage going into most games because they got a lot of question marks. As much as we know about Matthew Stafford, he's thrown 5 picks in his last 5 games against the 49ers specifically. Aaron Donald is obviously a first-ballot Hall of Famer. We know they have mainstays along with the head coach Sean McVay, but what they do have around them, I think a lot of people devalue just because they're young and they're unknown and they're question marks. But you got guys like Puka Nacua on the outside, Tutu Atwell that are filling in for a Kupp or Coop. And I think when he went down to preseason, is now on the IR, people are saying, well, let's just write them off. Their season's going to be over. They're going to try and tank for Caleb Williams. But in fact, the Rams last week, to me, Lo, not necessarily yet, but they threw themselves into the conversation for potentially the second best team in the NFC West. And that was something I don't think people had in their minds of being a plausible option heading into this year.
Yeah, I didn't either, because I looked at Seattle and the way that they played and the things that they've done last year, and you said, okay, how are you going to rank these teams? You look at the Rams. Did the Rams put too much value on the Super Bowl? People ask me, and I'm like, no, because you win a Super Bowl. You see what they did, the people they went out and paid, the money that they went to get a Super Bowl, and now they got the Super Bowl, and now it's that rebuild. It's like, okay, how do we get back into playoffs? How do we get back? Because you gave up a lot of trade value to bring in certain guys, and what you did, salary cap, making trades, Stafford, all these guys, and now you're up against it. So you can't go get those household names. That's why you got a guy in the receiver, Puka, what is his name, and you say, wow, look at this guy, the young man, the way that he's performing. He was come from where? Anywhere. And you think about what they've been able to do, the Rams, and play against a Seattle team that's been drafting well, and a Seattle team that has receivers and has a pretty good nucleus, and you were able to go there and win. The Rams did surprise a lot of people.
Well, and of course, there's a lot of bad blood between these teams because of what you mentioned, because of that Super Bowl, that elusive ring that the Rams were able to capture, and that ring that the 49ers are chasing this season. There's no doubt in my mind that the 49ers have that in their sights at the end of this year, more so than the Los Angeles Rams do. But Kyle Shanahan, 9-4 all-time against Sean McVay. But the one that got away was the NFC Championship game. And so I think there are going to be some, not necessarily, ghosts when you walk into that locker room, but Lo, having gone up against teams that you have had their number, but they've gotten you in the game that it counts. Is there an extra added motivation from your side to say, I know we've been rolling these guys. I know we've had a head-to-head advantage, but they took what we wanted, and we got to give it to them here on this given Sunday.
Oh, no question. And I think when you think about a couple years back when you saw the Rams and the Niners, I remember it like yesterday, and you remember in SoCal, and, the Niners have all the fans there, and it's the end of the game, and it's 4th and 1, whatever it was, and you just saw them hold the Niners, and you saw Debo. And you just remember that guy sitting on the sideline just crying because Debo that year was the year that let me reintroduce myself. My name is Debo, and that's Samuels. And you see the way that he played against the Packers, the way what he took over games in the playoffs. Running backs went down, and Debo stepped up, and he carried that team.
Yeah.
And to go to SoCal and have that game and have it just ripped right out of your hands at the end of that game, you remember that. So that is a feeling that you never forget, brother. I remember if you ask me, what is a game that sticks out with me, and it's simple. I remember with the Titans, Al Del Greco getting his field goal block, and we knew it was just like the Niners and the Rams. We knew the winner of that game was going to win the Super Bowl. We were playing against the Baltimore Ravens. Al Del Greco goes to kick the field goal, comes out low, gets blocked, goes the other way. That was a 10-point swing for us, and we barely lost that game. That game right there, we knew if we won that game, we're winning the Super Bowl. And we talked about all week, the winner of the Ravens and Titans is going to win the Super Bowl, and the Titans went on to blow out the Giants in the Super Bowl. That is a moment. The Niners knew there's a couple games like they knew, hey, if we get this one, it's ours. I've been in those situations. I remember it like yesterday. Ron McCree, I'm with the Chargers. You remember this one in 2006. All we have to do is he catches the ball and he falls down. We win that game, and we know we go on for greatness, and it doesn't happen. So those moments that happen, you don't forget. They're etched in your mind. They're etched in your brain. And don't think, without a doubt, the guys that are still on this team from that 3 years ago, from that NFC Championship game, they remember those moments.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, the Ravens go on to beat the Giants, similar to how the Rams go on to beat the Bengals. And that's why I do think it's fair for a lot of 49ers, both the players as the fans, the organization, to kind of feel like the Rams took that ring from them.
Yeah.
It was a little bit like the 2013 season where the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers are playing an NFC Championship. Whoever goes on to play the Broncos, you might have the advantage in that game.
Without a doubt.
The 49ers would have probably beaten Denver in that game, just like they would have probably beaten Cincinnati a couple of years ago. So, there is that added kind of fuel, and that's to me what fuels the rivalry more than anything else. The idea that they have something that is supposed to be yours, and even though we can't get it back, we got to take out that frustration here today.
And it's interesting you're talking about that, because I'm going to tell you right now, even though when they lost to Kansas City, yes, you know that's it. You don't have next week. And you looked at that Kansas City loss and you're like, man, we should have had that. If we make that throw, we win that game. But I'm going to tell you, more so than that Seattle game where you're talking about where Patrick Willis and the linebacker, the great linebacker that played with Patrick Willis, now
NaVorro
Bowman, when he tears up his knee, it should have been a fumble right there on the 1 yard line because he has the ball. When you think about that moment and the Rams, those are two Super Bowls that they say, if we win that, we know. When you were playing against Kansas City, you said, this is going to be a good game. We can possibly win. But I'm telling you, those two losses to me were two Super Bowls that you win for sure.
Yeah. And that's what I think the 49ers look. As much as we can't look ahead and we can't expect anything because there's a long way to go.
Oh, yeah.
We got 5.5 months, hopefully, before we get to that point. But taking that into week 2, it is game day. Can the 49ers go 2-0? Can they continue to stack wins and do it in an impressive manner that builds not only the confidence of what we believe them to be, but the confidence that I'm sure that they have in themselves? Because we talked about it last week, the fact that Kyle Juszczyk is saying the goal is the Lombardi, but you cannot get ahead of yourself. Especially, and this is why, as much as I do think the Niners and what that 7.5-point spread is something that's fair for this type of game, this is a classic. You cannot overlook your opponent in this game because you got a Rams team that might be an upstart team. We still don't know much about them yet outside of their top-heavy head coach, quarterback, defensive tackle, all highly paid, all highly renowned, all winners of a Super Bowl.
Right.
But if you're the 49ers, the rest of that team is unfamiliar and is a team that you should be able to handle. But how do you fare against a group that might throw something at you that you haven't seen before, because this is a different Rams team than the one even from a year ago?
Yeah, it's different. It's a different cast. Same jerseys and same team, but different cast of players that are on that team. So you're absolutely right. And that's what I like about Kyle Juszczyk when he says, look, we understand it's lifting up that Lombardi trophy, but we're not going to forget the process in which we have to get there. Take it last night, a game that we talked about, the Colorado Buffaloes against Colorado State. You saw a coach, which Deion Primetime loved greatly, good friend, but because of he made it about himself in a way, not meaning to, but now you have those young men that would follow him anywhere because they trust him and they love him and they know that he'll go to bat for him. But when you say, okay, this guy's disrespecting him because about the sunglasses, that's been Deion's persona since college. And people understand it's not a sign of disrespect because that's just who Deion is. But then when you put it on the players, okay, let's wear the glasses. Let's do these things. Now you have props that are getting in the way of the process. The process is to go out and play football. Deion does a great job of getting his players ready to go play, do a great job of coaching. That's the process. But when now you put shades and, okay, we want to do this and time, now you got these guys saying, now we're going to be able to do something and still go play a game, and that takes away. And you almost ran into a buzzsaw and almost lost that game because you wasn't prepared to play. In saying that, that's what Cal Huschik is saying. He said, we understand our end goal is to lift up that Lombardi trophy. Mm-hmm. But we cannot be deterred or detracted by the noise and everything else around us because people are going to be saying things, people are going to be in our ear doing those things. We can't listen to the outside noise. It's only us, the Band of Brothers.
No, I think that's a really good point, and especially taking that Colorado State game that the majority of America was watching last night as kind of a case study for the 49ers, because in every single quality team, organization, franchise, you are going to have a multitude of what I like to call peripheral enemies.
Sure.
Non-guys on the other sideline, guys, whether it's the media, the fans, the chirpers talking about what you should be doing as opposed to siloing in on your job. The 49ers are at a point where they will be building a whole lot of peripheral enemies if they continue to roll the way we believe them to. But a day like today, that has to be zoned out because you could fall victim to what Colorado nearly had last night, which was an upset on their home field in a place where the other team against you is certainly not one that talent-wise is on the same ball field. But if you drag yourself into that mud, if you do make things like Coach Prime said, personal, you allow a backdoor opportunity for your opponent to kind of get in your head, whether it's a cheap shot early, whether they're chirping on the sideline, to drag you out of the mind space that you're supposed to be in. And that is a place where the 49ers today absolutely cannot go.
No, they can't. And that's what you're talking about. When you're going and you're getting ready to play a Rams team on the road, you have to get rid of all the noise. And especially when people tell you, look, you're 7.5, you're 8 points favored. So now you have to realize your mindset, okay, they said we're supposed to blow this team out. Last night, Colorado was favored by 22 points. It didn't look like that. No. So when you start playing down and start letting the mind, and it's great we're talking about the mindset, when you start letting other things and outside sources get up in your head about how much dominant you are, what you're supposed to do, it doesn't happen because that other team, that's their calling card. That's their calling card. Even though these Ram players, a lot of them are different, but some of them aren't still the same. And these guys, these older veteran players, they're in those guys here saying, look what they're saying. They're going to blow us out by 7, 10. People aren't giving us a chance. Why aren't they giving us a chance? We are men. They put on their pants the same way, and that's the calling card that this coaching staff and the Rams are doing. I'm not talking about the game. I'm talking about the emotional, because there is besides X's and O's, brother, there is an emotional part of football that a lot of people outside looking in, they don't understand. There is a emotional, not just the physical, but the emotions carry it. It escalates the physical. If you don't have the emotional right and the mindset and the heart ready to go out there and play football, I'm telling you, you're not in it.
Well, and that's why I do think there's a chance for the 49ers today, who are a much more experienced, veteran-laden group than the one on the other side, even though they are led by, of course, Super Bowl champions in McVay, Stafford, and a guy like Aaron Donald. The 49ers have a chance against a majoritively younger group, I think, today, to attack them in a business-like fashion, because as much as I'm sure it's going to be personal, for someone like Deebo Samuel, and it's going to be emotional for George Kittle, and it's going to be emotional for Bosa and guys that have had to take those lumps and those L's in the biggest stage, like the NFC Championship game, they also understand because of that loss, they can't drag themselves back into that mind state. This is a fresh year. This is a new year, and the goal is 2-0 for the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, absolutely. And they get that, and they understand that. And I was just talking about, and that's what we're doing. We're just talking about, hey, look, this is what can happen mentally. We're not even gotten into the X's and O's. We're not talking about different matchups. We're just talking about what could happen. What are those things emotionally about? Because you look at last year, you saw, last week, what the Niners showed you. The guys had big plays. Who are those guys? You look at, a guy like McCaffrey, what he brings to the table, the Debo, Ayuk, like you're talking about Kittle. The Niners, when you're talking about the weapons that they have, and the firepower they have on defense and offense, both sides of the ball, they are a better team. We know that you're a better team. Now it's about going out there and executing, and they know what's at stake. Because it's about that number one seed. That's the things we talked about. If they don't go to Philly, is it a different outcome because they had to come? Philly has to come to San Francisco. So there's so many different underlying emotional, physical, just mindset that you have to think about. And you don't want to get too far down the road, but it starts now. Because if you don't take care of what you want to take care of today, 3, 5, 10 weeks ago, it has an effect. So even the things that you do today affects tomorrow. So you, as a player, you got to understand that the games you lose and wins now, they affect the future. So that's the mindset of the Niners, and they understand that. And that's what Cal Juszczyk was talking about when he's talking about lifting up that Lombardi trophy. He understands what they have to do now that's going to affect the future.
Well, the future is 90 minutes away, and that's kickoff at SoFi Stadium between your San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams, both 1-0, both trying to go 2-0. Will the 49ers be able to get it done? We'll dig into some key matchups coming up next. If you want to chime in with any thoughts about how you're feeling about the game, maybe what you're doing, how you're watching, and what you want to see today from the 49ers, 888-957-9570. Chime in on the Xfinity Mobile text line. Also, I see on YouTube and the Twitch chat powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Coming up next, I want to get into, we talked about what the 49ers did in week 1, but what did they do and what can they do against the Rams? What other teams were for real that you believe about their performances from the first week? What teams were the most flukish, and do the Rams potentially fit into that category? Because we're going to find out later on this afternoon in a rivalry matchup between the two sides. The kickoff show continues here on 95.7 The Game. Evan Giddings along with Lorenzo Neal. We're back after these messages.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising! After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
That's a 16-year NFL vet, Lorenzo Neal.
What up?
He'll be with you every single week here on the Kickoff Show. Next week, Larry Krueger's got you for all home games. Evan Giddings got you locked in for every single road game this season here on 95.7 The Game. We got 90 minutes until kickoff from SoFi Stadium. 49ers, Rams, both 1-0. It's rivalry week here in the NFC West. And Lo, we're kind of talking about some of the week one takeaways for the 49ers, some of the week one takeaways from the Rams. What the Rams did to Seattle last week kind of presented us with the question we're just going to start with here, which team do you think disappointed you more, the opponents for the teams that we're going to see today, the Steelers or the Seahawks?
That's a great question because I without a doubt, you wouldn't be wrong either way, because if you look at Seattle, knowing the terrible, the extra 12th man that Seattle goes by and that plays how it rocks, you're like, okay, it's got to be Seattle. Then you think about a Steeler team that missed the playoff. Mike Tomlin's been a great coach, and it's tough to win there, and all the things that are surrounding there. I'm gonna go with the Steelers, because you expected more. You thought that this team, okay, they talked about this, the quarterback Pete Perkett, that he was going to get a lot better, and he was, he five starts and preseason touchdown. They've been lighting it up in preseason. So you thought with their defense, their offense, you thought that the Steelers would make more of a stink. And it was never close. Seattle was least in it early. So I'm going to go with the Steelers, a bigger disappointment.
I think the Seattle Seahawks disappointed me more because of what we thought the Rams were.
Yeah.
And I think both you and I have the utmost respect for Sean McVay and that organization, of course, with what they've done. But coming into this season, this was a team that many people had potentially, in the mix with the Cardinals to being one of the worst teams of the NFC. And they showed you week one that not only are they not going to be one of the worst teams in the NFC, but they might potentially be the second best team in the NFC West. Of course, the season will play itself out, but that's how good I think they were specifically in the second half, being able to go up and down the field on the Seattle Seahawks, 30-13 the final score there. Meanwhile, the Steelers, to me, it was more about what the 49ers did to them. I don't think the Steelers are a bad team by any means, and even though a 7-point performance in the opening week at home is not great, I think the 49ers just exposed them on just about every single level possible. And so to me, it was about what the 49ers did to Pittsburgh as opposed to what I think Seattle could not do against the Rams.
That's a great point. What do you think when you talk about just the two quarterbacks? When you look at the Seattle quarterback and you think about the Steelers quarterback, which one disappointed? How did you rank those? What about the performance as far as turnovers? How did you look at that? What when you're talking about making this evaluation or talking about the disappointment, is it a position? Was it collectively? Just trying to see kind of your thought process of making these decisions.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because even though Geno Smith is obviously, a vet, and he's much older, he's got more experience than Kenny Pickett, last year was his first year as a full-time starter.
Yeah.
So they're kind of coming from the similar place. Kenny Pickett took over as starter midway through last year, and then week one, to get the 49ers defense, I think was just an unfair fire that they threw that sophomore kid into.
Yeah.
And he was not very good by any means. He was inaccurate, didn't look like he knew where to go with the ball. But to me, I give a lot of credit to the 49ers defense. And I also give a lot of credit to Steve Wilks in his first game as DC for the 49ers, because he talked a lot about how they were going to blitz and they're going to bring the linebackers and utilize that speed that the 49ers have more so than a lot of defenses. But honestly, he didn't touch much. They didn't blitz a whole lot.
No.
I think they were 20th out of 32 teams in terms of blitzing last week. They let their dogs up front, the four-man front that might be one of the best in football.
It is.
Get loose. I think the 49ers defense was ironed and just buttoned up in a sense that made things much more difficult for Kenny Pickett. And Geno Smith, meanwhile, against the Rams defense, we're going to find out how for real they are today, because the offense for the 49ers is going to test them.
Right.
But I expected much more out of Geno Smith, certainly more than one first down in the second half.
I see what you're saying. That point's well taken, because you got Geno, a veteran guy, and understanding how to get rid of the ball, where's pressure coming, should beat the ball with his arm, saying, okay,
he's
if
also
you
got
guys
more
going to
weapons.
blitz, yes, and you have more weapons. You look at Pinkett and you say, okay, here's a guy that's asked to carry the team, and that's why it goes back to Purdy. When you look at Purdy, what he has, and yes, Purdy's a guy that can go out and operate the offense and run at a high level, but that's the thing I think that is a game changer and that sets the 49ers apart, is because this young man understands the offense. This young man understands what Kyle Shanahan is doing and what he's trying to accomplish, so he does not turn bad plays into worse plays. And so you talk about two guys in their second year as being a starting quarterback. And Purdy, one looks like a second-year player, and the other one looks like an all-world player that's been in the league for 10 years because both these guys came in the league, and one was drafted a lot higher, and you're seeing the results you're getting.
That's Lorenzo O'Neill. My name is Evan Giddings, taking you up until kickoff here on the Kickoff Show, 49ers Rams Week 2. We got people chiming in on YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Ready, I see you. Don't give Stafford time. Let's get to the quarterback. Meanwhile, it looks like we got a Rams fan in the chat talking some trash.
Uh-oh.
That's the kind of rivalry that we're dealing with here, Lo, because anytime you get division rivals, you play them twice a year. McVay, Shanahan, both head coaches, 2017. I think the kind of matchup that, to me, is going to not necessarily determine this game, but that's the most interesting, is the quarterback matchup, because you just mentioned Brock Purdy, who's 6-0 as a starter, has not thrown for less than 2 touchdowns in any one of those games. He's been almost flawless. But Matt Stafford is the guy that's got the resume. He's got the Super Bowl. He's got the career yardage, the touchdowns, the big arm. Do you think that it's fair to kind of look at Brock Purdy and saying that he needs to outduel Stafford today? Or is it just more he needs to manage the game the way he has through his first 6 starts and put the Niners in a position where the rest of the team can also aid in as well?
I think that's a great point, the latter of the two, because when you think about Stafford has to play great in order for the Rams to win. Purdy doesn't necessarily have to play great. He has to manage the game, don't do stupid things like we alluded to. But if you talk about these two teams and you're saying, does he have to out-battle Stafford? I don't think so. And that's when you look at what he's done, and people saying, okay, he's got to go out here and do those things. You don't got to ask that from him. You got to say, look, our defense is good enough to get off the field. Our defense is good enough to put pressure on Stafford. All we need you to do is not turn on the ball and let your playmakers make plays, and our best is good enough. So it's going to be just interesting because you have a guy in Stafford. Now, he can't play bad. See, if Stafford plays bad, they can't overcome that. I think, and not that Purdy has to play. If Purdy plays horrible, yes, the Niners lose. If Purdy plays good or average and just stay in average and not below average, if he's 60-70%, they win that game. Stafford can't play at 50 or 60%. Their team is not good enough to overcome that. So I think when you asking that question, Purdy has to play good, not great. Teams that he's going to have to play great against, you know those teams that are out there. But the Rams, I don't think is that team.
And I don't think that's a slight or a knock on Brock Purdy when you say that, because, for example, Micah Parsons, arguably one of the best pass rushers we've seen in a long time for the Dallas Cowboys, came out and said Brock Purdy is a top 15 quarterback. To me, if Brock Purdy is a top 15 quarterback throughout this season, the 49ers are going to win a lot of football games. That doesn't mean he has to be great, but that means if the floor is top 15 or above, that the 49ers will be in every single football game, and against a team specifically like the Los Angeles Rams that are devoid of as much talent as they've been in years past. If Brock Purdy's top 15, they're going to win today.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's the thing. Brock Purdy, not necessarily, I think in this offense, I think he's probably a top 5 or top 10 in this particular offense, because it's not about Purdy. See, you could get certain guys that come in this offense and say, you know what, I'm going to hold the ball. I'm going to go hit that deep 7 route or that 9 route. I'm going to go there. I'm not going to hit that instead of sitting that come over or the deep come over or the 5 that come back. The things that Kyle Shanahan orchestrates, Purdy says, I'm getting the ball out of my hand quick. I don't have to take that deep shot. I don't have to wait to that third receiver. I'm going to take what they're giving me right away. And when you do that, now it's pitch and catch. It's 5 yards, it's 10 yards, it's 15 yards. Oh, I just got you for 30. It's 3 yards, it's 4 yards, it's 5 yards, it's a first down. Mm-hmm. And that's what Purdy does well for this offense. And that's what Kyle Shanahan loves, because he says he operates this offense efficiently. So I think he's even higher than that as far as proficiency for offenses in that particular offense. You could put Purdy on other teams, and he wouldn't have the success. If he's on the Chargers, he wouldn't have the success that he's having. If he's on Dallas, where it's a 7-step drop, it's a lot more drop back passes. They want to go deep. It's a different philosophy. You put him on those type of teams, I don't think he has this type of success, because of what Shanahan does and how Shanahan views it and how Purdy understands what he wants to do. That's what makes this match made in heaven.
Yeah, as much as I don't know if Purdy would have the kind of success with other teams, it does feel like Brock Purdy is almost kind of the perfect quarterback for this system.
It's the best.
I don't know if you're right. I don't know if Brock Purdy could go have the same success with Dallas, but I don't believe that Dak Prescott, for example, could have the same success that Purdy's having with the 49ers because Purdy has the exact skill set that Kyle Shanahan wants.
Agreed. 1,000. And that's what I was saying. So I wasn't sliding on Purdy, but it's exactly what you just alluded to. Because of the fact he can go somewhere else and wouldn't be that. New England, certain places, like, okay, he's not necessarily going to have this type of success. But you can bring in a Dak and, like you said, other quarterbacks, and they did. Hey, we got a guy that we named. I got Jimmy G on the phone. He did not have the success that Purdy has in this offense because Jimmy wanted to hold the ball a little longer at times. Jimmy wanted to look for other things, a bigger play. Purdy is saying, I'm going to take it when I believe that I need to take it, but it's going to be after lethargical, going down the field and moving the ball down the field before he does it. So I agree. I don't think there's a lot of quarterbacks in this league that can run Shanahan's offense with the perfection that Purdy does.
Well, that's why I think you bring up an interesting point about kind of the rankings because we too often, I believe, look at quarterbacks through the individual lens, but really It's about the prism of their system. And I don't look at that as a prison for Purdy's rankings because if you're telling me that Brock Purdy is a top 5, top 10 quarterback, I have no choice but to look at how he produces for that offense.
Right.
And so, yes, he's got arguably the best weapons in football. Maybe individually, they don't have the best set of wide receivers. Maybe they don't have the best tight end. They probably have the best running back, but they might not have, the best offensive line. But together as a whole, when Brock Purdy's under center, that offense moves, and especially in week 1, was a smooth, well-oiled machine that I don't know if another quarterback can step into and make it look the way that it did. So that's where I think Brock Purdy deserves much more credit than he gets because you'll hear a lot of people say, well, yes, you drop him in here, he's not good. You drop him in there, he's not going to be as good. You bring in another quarterback, he can do the same thing. I think Brock Purdy has made me reevaluate the way I look at if you actually can bring another signal caller into Shanahan's system and get the same thing, because even Jimmy Garoppolo did not look nearly this good as Brock Purdy has right out of the gates.
And that's the point that we're making. You look at Jimmy G, who was a good quarterback. Brock Purdy ran this offense better. And it's not to say that Jimmy couldn't run a different offense better, but with this particular offense, I think there's a guy that I can get on the phone that would run this offense probably a little bit better because he understands it and he understands football and understand what you're trying to do. And that's Tom Brady. Yeah. You knew where I was going, right? Because you think about Tom, what he was able to do.
Pretty sure the Jets have been calling.
Right. You have to realize what he was able to do. He went to New England. Okay, he understand Belichick, what he wanted, what the hood he wanted. So he said, okay, I'm going to do this. But he understood football. He understands if you got a cornerback and you see the safety come down, he understands that safety is going to blitz from that side. So he's either going to turn protection there, but if you got a safety coming and the linebacker, now that you have one extra guy, even if you turn, that you can't block. So Brady will know that pressure is coming from that side, and now Brady's going to hit you with that hot and that side adjust because he's on the same page. And that's the kind of guy then went over to Tampa Bay and was able to have that same success because he's involved. And I think that Kyle Shanahan and Tom Brady, that was a match that I think a lot of people wanted to see, would have been an unbelievable success story because of the fact these guys have that high football IQ. But Brock Purdy, in my opinion, I think 15 is too high. He should be a lot lower because of what he does for this offense. I think if you talked about this offense, I say he's a top 5. But overall in the league, I can understand if you're just talking about 15 or higher. Yes, I can understand that.
Well, yeah, and look, YouTube's chiming in. If you put Burrow in the system, think he would look bad. This from Mountain Cat. Appreciate you chiming in on YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. It's not to say that if you take someone else, like, for example, Tom Brady in his heyday, yes, he's going to look just as good. But I do question how many guys would elevate this offense at a level more than what the Niners are currently churning out, because they're putting up 30 points per week with this kid. And yes, his individual statistics, 220, 2 touchdowns, keeping the ball out of harm's way. It's not anything that's going to wow you. But when you watch him play, there's kind of a confidence that I feel like is not only on the face of Brock Purdy, but that kind of permeates throughout that locker room, that right now, this kid has not been beaten when he has started and finished a football game. And until that happens, I do think we have to give him the benefit of the doubt that it is just as much him as it is the weapons. And, of course, Kyle Shanahan is calling the play.
I totally agree. But to answer that question, yes. If you had If you had Joe Cool could operate this because he's more elusive than Purdy. He's more athletic. He has a little bit more athletic ability than Purdy. He throws the ball. He can throw. It's nothing he can't do. But hey, that's all hypotheticals. I get it. But I'm just saying, like you just alluded to, what we have is Purdy, and Purdy is pretty darn good, and he's been unbelievable. And like you said, what he's been able to do, go out 6-7-0, and continue to show that he's improving. I don't want. I wouldn't want anyone else under the center but Purdy
right now, especially for what he's making. For the 510 Xfinity Mobile text line, let Purdy rip it. Well, we saw him rip it last week against the Steelers. And I'll tell you what, the guy who does rip it with the best of them is the guy low that we're going to see today on the other side, and that's Matthew Stafford. Now, he's not going to face the same Seattle defense, of course, that he faced in Week 1, but you could put together a case that Stafford, 24 of 38 in Week 1, 334 yards, maybe no touchdowns, but most importantly, no turnovers, and letting that running game finishing off those type of drives, specifically in the second half in which they put up 23 unanswered points. Matthew Stafford is a guy that I think is in that kind of that echelon or that conversation of, well, he is a damn good individual quarterback. When you took him out of Detroit, you saw the results. He went and got you a Super Bowl in of course, Los Angeles. But now, is he the kind of quarterback that without Cooper Kupp, that without a quality, dominant offensive line and run game, can he be the guy to elevate the Rams offense against great defenses? We saw him do it against a marginal one last week in Seattle, but he's going to be tested far more so this week against San Francisco, who also has been able to kind of frustrate him at times since he joined the Rams.
Yeah, when you look at a guy like Cooper Kupp and you said, wow, look at what did Cooper Kupp do for Matthew Stafford? Well, you watch those two guys, they were on the same page. Like I talked about with Tom Brady and Wes Walker. We saw how he would, or Edelman, those guys would win right away. When you're playing against a team and teams that can come after you and put pressure on you and do those things, if they got great front four, the quarterback means everything. The quarterback means everything. That means because the quarterback has to get rid of the ball, the quarterback has to understand where his hot read's coming, but he also has to trust the guy that is going to win, like right now. That's why Cooper Kupp, when you saw Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp on the same page, when you saw Tom Brady and Wes Walker on the same page, because he knew that he had a guy that could win right now. He knew that, hey, they're gonna come. I can't hold on to the ball. Give those receivers a two-way cut. So if the guy's playing outside, he understood he's gonna push his outside shoulder. So if if the DB is playing on the outside shoulder of Wes Walker was gonna push his outside shoulder, and he knew he was gonna beat him inside. And Tom Brady knew to throw it to a spot. So Matthew Stafford, today you get to see a veteran type of quarterback. He has to win with the ball because his offensive line is not going to give him enough time for 7-step drop. You don't have time to do that all day long. You saw last week the Miami Dolphins come after the Chargers. In the end of that game, they sacked them 3 times because it was a 7-step drop. They said, we're going to bring one extra guy that you can't block. And when you can't do that in the National Football League, the quarterback has to get the ball out of his hand or you don't have a chance. So we're going to see if Stafford has that today.
Yeah, and look, Stafford was not sacked once against Seattle. I think that's more of an indictment on the defensive line of the Seahawks because we saw a pretty good Steelers offensive line, more on the interior than the tackles positions, just get ransacked. Kenny Pickett was running for his life the majority of that football game, even without the blitzing. With Hargrave in the mix now, Armstead on the interior. You obviously got Bosa. Drake Jackson had a hat trick in his first game of the season this year. Was incredible. How is Stafford going to line up? But you also said something that I thought was very interesting. And we're going to hear from John Dickinson, by the way, in just about 10 minutes. He is live at SoFi Stadium. He's going to give us an update on what is going on, if there's any ineligibles, inactives that we need to be aware of heading into this football game today between the Rams and the 49ers, of course. But is Brock Purdy starting to develop that type of chemistry that you talked about between Brady and Welker, Stafford and Kupp? Is he starting to develop that with someone like Brandon Ayuk?
He is. And you see it. You see those guys, that touchdown he threw against Peterson to Ayuk. He said, I'm throwing it to your inside shoulder. Only my receiver's going to catch it. Peterson had great coverage. You see what he's doing now with the ball. He's beating guys with the ball. He's throwing it to a spot where guys can big body so they can body the defender out of the way where only the receiver has a chance to catch it. You're starting to see that. You see it all. You always see it with him, and you see Debo and him on the same page. But him and Ayuk has that special type of receiver quarterback that you want to see. But you see it also with the running back. You watch McCaffrey, and Purdy knows where he wants to go to the ball. When you have a guy like that starts to have chemistry with different players in different positions, you are going to have a lot of success, a huge amount of success because of the fact you're on that page. And that means Purdy's not getting sacked. That means that he's not taking sacks because he's getting the ball out of his hands. And that's why when you hear guys from Dallas say Purdy's a top 15 quarterback, because when you can't get to a guy, it frustrates defenses. When the Chargers couldn't get to Tua last week, it frustrated the defense. When you can't get to a quarterback because the quarterback understands what you're trying to do and he takes your strength and he nullifies your strength because he's saying, I'm going to get rid of the ball, that's how you win, and that's no different than anything. You don't see a semi, you don't get a tractor and put it against a Porsche out on the street. It's a blowout. But now try to put a Porsche in a field and let it race a tractor. Who wins that race? The tractor. So that's the analogy to make. You have to understand what a great team, a great pass rushing team is trying to do. And that's how your quarterback says, it doesn't matter because I'm going to beat you with the ball. So it nullifies that.
And when you have that kind of unsung chemistry between them, it adds so much more to that. I know it's not necessarily passing and receiving, but you block for a dozen 1,000-yard rushers. I imagine there has to be a chemistry between you two, knowing that you're going to lay the wood, you're going to lay the runway, and it's all about them finding the hole that you're creating for, whether it's LaDainian Tomlinson, whether it's guys,
Eddie George
we were just talking about,
Corey Dillon, all those guys. It's crazy that you said. It makes a great point. So when you have the safety and the safety's coming down, imagine people that out there, you listen, you guys know when cover two. Cover two means two safeties deep, strong safety and free safety. If your safety comes down and you know it's force, where he's forcing, that means he's got outside contained. The linebacker now is switching responsibility and he has the inside. So he knows the linebacker's job is to cut the inside off for you to make the running back bounce outside where the safety is. We would run 40 and 50 power, and I would say force, and I knew that the safety was coming down. LT and I both knew it. So what I would do, that's LaDainian Tomlinson, I said, I have to beat this linebacker to the spot, and I would get my head inside. So if I got my head inside of that linebacker, his job was to beat me inside, and if I won and got my head inside of him, now you had the linebacker and the safety outside. LaDainian would push like he's going outside and understand that I was going to get my head in, and now he would come back inside, and now the safety is playing air. So you brought down the safety to the outside because he has force, but he's not even in the play because I got my head inside. He and the linebackers outside. LaDainian has a clean hole because chemistry. And exactly, to answer your question, no question, you got to have chemistry, but you not only have chemistry, but you got to understand football and what they're trying to do and what you're trying to do. So that is big, and that's going to be a big part in the Gays game.
Well, that is Lorenzo Neal. My name is Evan Giddings. Coming up next, on the other side, we got John Dickinson. He is live at SoFi Stadium. He'll help us preview the 49ers and the Rams Week 2, 2 unbeatens heading into the second week of the NFL season, and that is what is coming up next. Also a reminder, after the game, I should say, following the final whistle, overtime begins here on 95.7 The Game. You got Mark Grandy, Sterling Bennett, Alan Stiles giving you all the post-game reaction, post-game sound, the coverage, thoughts, and predictions of what is moving forward for the 49ers. That's all after the final whistle between the 49ers and the Rams. But up next, JD, John Dickinson will join us here on 95.7 The Game. That's Lorenzo Neal. I'm Evan Giddings. This is the Kickoff Show. We're back after this.
Kelley Blue Book is the one-stop shop for pricing, fixing, selling, and instant.
Minutes until kickoff. Week 2 action of the NFL between your San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. We're going to head down to SoFi Stadium with Lorenzo Neal, Evan Giddings. We are joined by none other than John Dickinson. JD, how are we feeling in SoCal, brother? How are you?
What's going on, fellas? Yeah, just kind of making the rounds up at the top level, which is the main level here at SoFi. I've never been to a stadium really in any sport that's so restrictive as far as where you can go. It's pretty amazing. But just making the rounds and kind of getting off the elevator and just walking the concourses as I'm prone to do. I mean, it is just 49er fans everywhere. I mean, 90% just walking around. And I know there'll be some Rams fans here, and it'll probably end up being 60-40 or 60, 2-1 or however you want to put it. But, I mean, it is a sea of red. And there's, make no mistake, I mean, it is Levi's South to the hilt. And it has been, I know every time I've been down here, it's been that way, including the NFC Championship game that the Rams won a couple of years back. But every time, even though I know it's coming, it still is jaw-dropping to actually see how fired up the 49er fan base is to get out on the road and see their team.
No question. JD, it's always great having you on 95.7 The Game. JD, when you look at these two teams, the Rams and the Niners, that is, last week, both win their game handily. Which was the better performance? And also, which team was the biggest disappointment, talking about Seattle and the Steelers?
Yeah, I think for the Seahawks to lose at home to the Rams, to me, that was really bad. I thought the Niners were the more impressive, just based on the fact that I think just we'd all been kind of gassing up Pittsburgh for the preseason that they'd had and just how seriously they took it. And I know we talked about the physicality seemingly being a match and maybe even the Steelers having an edge in the trenches low. I know you and I were aligned on that. And then the Niners came out and hit him in the mouth immediately, and the defensive line took control of the game. I thought it was interesting that Mike Tomlin chose to take the ball when they won the toss rather than defer. And the 49ers, he wanted his offense on the field, and the 49ers made him regret it immediately, from Armstead blowing up plays in the middle to Fred Warner taking Najee Harris's head off early. I mean, they just set a tone of dominance and couldn't be stopped either. That you go down and score that first touchdown, and it was McCaffrey on the ground, it was Ayuk through the air, and the Niners just having their way. So I think that was as impressive a performance as any team had in the NFL in week 1, what the 49ers did in Pittsburgh. And I think, are the Rams better than we thought they were? Maybe. I think today may be more of a true tell as to that than the game up in Seattle that the Rams won. But make no mistake, that was a surprising outcome for sure, because I think everybody sort of had this penciled in as being a two-team race in the NFC West between the 49ers and the Seahawks, and the Rams maybe even being borderline in the tanking category. So the Rams were far from that in week 1. I thought their ability to move the football was impressive. Look, they still have Matthew Stafford on the offensive side. They still have Aaron Donald on the defensive side, and they were able to between Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua. I mean, they were able to get the ball to some guys who could make some plays last week. So the 49ers are going to have their work cut out for them, maybe a little bit more than we all anticipated.
John Dickinson joining us here on 95.7 The Game, live from SoFi Stadium before the 49ers and the Rams kick off in just under an hour. I'm curious, JD, like with the 49ers regular season win streak now at 8, Kyle Shanahan has had the regular season dominance and advantage over his coaching counterpart in Sean McVay. What do you think the 49ers, I should say, what do you think the Rams need to do in order to break that streak? Because I believe that everyone has, at least on paper, giving the 49ers the edge. That's why we're seeing a 7-point advantage. I think that even though the Rams were a surprising and upstart group last week in Seattle, a lot of people are expecting them to come down to earth. Do you expect that to happen, and do you expect San Francisco to roll in this game?
Yeah, I think the 49ers should win this game comfortably. I'm not, a lot of times games that are comfortable wins are not necessarily blowouts. Blowouts just kind of happen when you don't maybe expect them to be, like last week in Pittsburgh. But I think this is a game that the 49ers should be able to control. To kind of answer your first question about how can the Rams make life difficult, it really starts with the ability to protect Matthew Stafford and allow him to spread the ball all over the field to some of those lesser-known playmakers that were able to have some big games in Seattle. And then it's Aaron Donald on the opposite side, just wrecking shop on the interior, wrecking shop maybe lining up, right guard and maybe even moving him to the outside as the Rams will do from time to time and take advantage of where the 49ers were more vulnerable. Maybe the most vulnerable spot on the field either way last week was on the right side of that offensive line. Now, it turned out to not matter in the game. The 49ers were able to control things, and but Watt still had his way going up against McKivitz at that right tackle spot. And look, I know Donald's not he's an interior guy, but they move him around. But it's his ability to wreck shot. But the Niners, for the most part, have been able to do a job on Aaron Donald, whether it's been double teams, whether it's been running at him. There have been a lot of games where the game plan has been really sound. And even though the 49ers have had some shaky offensive lines at times, they've been able to do what they need to do to keep him under control to where the 49ers offense can flourish. But to me, it's all about up front. If the 49ers control the game up front in the trenches, then I think they win this game comfortably. Maybe it's close early, but it turns into a double-digit type of a deal.
JD, with that being said, where is the holes? If you're looking at the Niners and you're the Rams, looking at you talk about the right side of the offense, where would be the holes? Where would the Rams try to exploit the Niners defense?
The Niners defense, it's in the slot for sure. I think that's one area where, you look at Tutu Atwell and the game that he was able to have, and we'll see what happens as far as how the Niners, without Samuel Womack, I don't think that's going to matter. At least it shouldn't too much, but it may matter, in terms of just overall depth with the Niners kind of rotating between Lenore moving inside and Isaiah Oliver in the slot. The Rams get most of their passing game through the slot. And so I think that is an area where the 49ers defensively are probably the most vulnerable. So I do think that is something to keep an eye on in this game. And because we've seen it with Cooper Kupp for forever. And there's been games where Cooper Kupp's had 10, 12, 15 catches against the 49ers. And they've almost said, you can have it. We're not letting you get anything else. We're going to dominate up front and still win the game anyway. But I do think there is a little bit of a mismatch with one area of weakness for the 49ers being one area of strength for the Rams, and that's ability to throw the ball to the middle of the field.
Well, JD, when you talk about that, then with all that being settled, what is the deterring factor when you talk about what the San Francisco 49ers have to do, what the Rams have to do? Does that mean, in your opinion, that Seattle's just not as good as you thought? Or two, if the Niners just better than what the Steelers thought? How would you talk about collectively to really get a true balance of what we saw last week to move that in today's game?
Yeah, I'm always surprised when Seattle loses at home. They weren't as good at home last year. That one really did floor me when the Rams went there and beat them. I think it's probably still a little early to tell. Maybe Seattle isn't quite as good. Seattle looked dead in December. And they got some draft picks, and I think they believe they're an improved team over the overachieving team that ended up making the playoffs last year. But, would it surprise me? And I look, and they're down going to the fourth quarter, but it's close in Detroit. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe the Rams are better than expected, at least while the Rams are whole. Injuries wind up beating up everybody. If something happens to Stafford, I think they are immediately in contention to not win any games if they have to be playing backup quarterbacks, talking about the Rams. But I think so far, given what we've seen, and again, maybe today leads us farther down that path, I think the Rams are better than people thought, and I think maybe Seattle isn't quite as good as people thought. I think the Niners are every bit as good as what people thought, and maybe even a little bit better based on the performance that they turned in Pittsburgh against a team that I think everybody believed had the ability to match the physicality. Really, TJ Watt had his game, and it didn't even matter. That that to me was startling. And I think from a Niner point of view, Evan, it just becomes play your game, control the line of scrimmage, and play your game and get the ball to McCaffrey. I mean, this is where McCaffrey made his starting debut with the 49ers back in October, and he ran for a touchdown, he caught a touchdown, and he threw for a touchdown. And it was off to the races. The Niners are 13-1 since that game at the end of October, the last time they played at SoFi. So I think the Niners are at a point where regardless of the opponent, it's go out there, play your game, and let's see if the opponent can elevate to your level, because I think the Niners believe that there are very few teams in the league that can do that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. John Dickinson reporting live from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, where the 49ers are going to take on the Rams in about 45 minutes. JD, I want to get you out of here on this. Not only a prediction for the game, but you mentioned McCaffrey, and last week, kind of the driving force offensively was Ayuk. You can make the case defensively for a couple of guys, but if you're going to make a prediction, I want your score, but who you think will be potentially that guy to drive home the win for the 49ers this afternoon.
Yeah, I would roll with McCaffrey on that front until proven otherwise. I mean, he is the guy that, bad play, throw it to McCaffrey. Need to make sure you get 4 or 5 yards. Yeah. Run that little inside pitch to McCaffrey, and then when you pick up 4 yards, it seems like every time you run it. So I think the beauty of the way the Niners are constructed is as teams scout them and get more tape on them and try to take certain things away. I mean, look, Brandon Ayuk may just be that good to where you can't completely take him away, but it's going to open up Debo, and it's going to open up, hey, diddle, kittle down the middle. and it's going to open up other opportunities for other players, and that's where Kyle Shanahan can scheme it up. But I'm rolling with McCaffrey as the straw that stirs the drink, as he has been since that first start here last October, and I think I like the Niners to score 30 again in this one. I like the Niners 33-20, something like that, 30-17, 33-20, and maybe it winds up being close for a quarter and a half to 2 quarters into the third, but the 49ers end up taking control, and then maybe the Rams get one late to make it in that 10 to 14 point range.
All right, John Dickinson, much appreciated. I hope you can enjoy what it sounds like a sea of red today at SoFi Stadium, and appreciate you hopping on with us, man.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
That's John Dickinson reporting live. Look, a lot of good stuff there, Lo. And I think off of the last thing that he said, and kind of what we were echoing in that first hour, which is the fact that if the 49ers play their game, if this is a floor or above game for the 49ers, we both expect them to walk away and they're 2-0.
Oh, without a doubt. If they play their football, their best football, Niner football, they should win 2-0. They should be 2-0.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
So if we're talking about, things that the 49ers can carry over from last week, obviously a lot to love, but specifically I think getting after Matthew Stafford becomes the most important thing for me, because we saw what Stafford was able to do, granted against the Seattle defense, but once he gets comfortable in the pocket, once you allow a veteran, quality, big arm-throwing quarterback to build that kind of chemistry with maybe unknown guys, Puka Nacua, 5th-round pick last year, Tutu Atwell in the slot, and, of course, even Van Jefferson on the outside. Once you allow him to get comfortable and that offensive line to get comfortable, I do think this is a place where the Rams could kind of use that momentum to maybe find a way into this football game. But if you nip that in the bud the way you did against Pittsburgh and you get after Stafford and make him uncomfortable, which they have done against him in the past, then I think it's almost curtains for Los Angeles, and the 49ers can kind of just manage the rest of that football game.
Yeah, it's big for the Niners to make Stafford play from behind. Because what it does, and we alluded to how great quarterbacks that get rid of the ball and they beat you with the timing and beat you with their arm because of timing. What happens though when you're down by 14 or more? What happens now? You got to go 7-step drop. Now you don't have necessarily time on your side. You can't necessarily run the ball to keep teams off balance. When those things start to leave the building, and those things start to leave a team that's not predicated on running, like the Rams, and can't do certain things, and then he's got to go. Stafford's a little older now. He's got to go 7-step. Now he's got the Bosa and all those guys, Armstead, those guys in his face. That's when it becomes a jailbreak. That's when it becomes ugly. So what Stafford is going to have to do, and what the Rams are going to have to do, is say, okay, we got to get rid of the ball quick. We got to screen, draws, make sure we're getting quick passes, and keep the Niners defense at bay. They're going to look for the Rams to come out and look for them to go up tempo, but look for them to spread the ball around, look for Stafford to get the ball out of his hand quick to try to keep the defense off balance, and look for them to say, look, we need to score so we can keep the ball away from the Niners. That's going to be the key for this Rams team. I don't think they can do it with consistency, but when you're playing against a veteran quarterback and a wise quarterback, his game plan is to say, I'm going to keep the ball away from them. I'm going to control clock. I'm going to control it by the way that I throw the ball and get rid of the ball. And I'm going to keep that defense. I'm going to keep that offense off the field, because the Niners offense, it can cut you in different ways. Like you talked about, it can line up and say, we're just going to run the ball. We're going to beat you up. We're going to throw the ball. So it's nothing that they can't do. So that's why I think the onus is on the Rams today about ball control and how they're going to keep that offense off the field.
Yeah, no, that 49ers offense, they can beat you, death by 1,000 cuts. They can beat you with one cut to the jugular. They can beat you with 5 to the arteries.
Right.
They can get you a multitude of ways. The first thing that JD mentioned, I do want to get to number 23, McCaffrey, in a second, because he has been, I think, one of the guys that's just because of his own greatness has flown under the radar a little bit, even since he got here last season. But the first thing that he mentioned, the fact that the 49ers are looking right now at a lot of red. Like they're looking at potentially 60, 70% of that stadium, SoFi or Levi's South, I think is what they call it, being red and gold. Over the last 4 seasons, Lo, the 49ers have won 23 times on the road. That is the most of any NFC team, and second only behind the Kansas City Chiefs for road dominance in the NFL. I think it as much points to the 49ers being a team and a style that travels, but also that fan base is chipping in as well when you're looking up and down and you're seeing nothing but red and gold, like they did last week in Pittsburgh.
No question. And that was one of the way that actually the biggest traveling when at Pittsburgh, when you saw that Steeler game last week and to see how much red was there, that usually doesn't happen. I've been to a lot of these ballparks. I played there with the Steelers and played, against them when I was with the Chargers. I played against them when I was with the Ravens, and the Ravens travel well. I've been to that place. Usually it's usually not that many seats for the opposing team. I've been to I played for the Chargers when the Steelers came and traveled here. But the Niner faithful, it's pretty amazing just the way that they travel. That place is going to be electrifying. Those fans are going to have the Niners hyped. Man, 30 minutes. I can't wait.
Yeah, just about 30 minutes away from kickoff. This is the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game, coming at you every single week. Evan Giddings, Lorenzo Neal will be here with you all 17 weeks. Larry Kruger's got you covered on home games. My name is Evan Giddings. I got you covered for road games every single time the Niners hit the road like they do this week. I know next week, of course, they got that short week on Thursday night. It does not necessarily place an importance on getting the win, but I do think that if you're looking at Low, a chance to maintain a pace. Dallas has got the New York Jets this week. Would assume that's probably going to be a W because they lost their quarterback last week. The Eagles are already 2-0. How do you kind of keep those blinders on to say, yes, those are our main 2 competitors in the 3-dog NFC top-heavy race? We want the 1 seed, but also how do you kind of have them in the back of your mind of saying that's where we need to be? We need to keep the pace with those guys, but also we got to focus on the guys on the other sideline, right?
Yeah, no question. And that's why you look at the menu, but you say, I'm not ordering that. I'm on a diet. I can't get that double animal style. I can't do that, even. I can't do that, Evan. I can't do it. So it's nothing wrong with looking at that double, and it's no longer looking at that, so they're looking over there and saying, okay, I got the Eagles, they're the double, and okay, I got the quarter pounder over here, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. And you say, okay, I know who those guys are. But you know what? I'm that whatever I am. I'm the ice cream. I'm the dessert. I'm going to stay in the middle. So I just think that you look to both sides and you understand what's going on, but you stay focused. And so it doesn't matter what they do. It's got to be about us. And that's what the Niners organization has done a great job with. That's why you heard Cal Juszczyk say, look, we want to host that Lombardi, but he said, we got to trust the process and we got to do what we need to do. And that's saying, okay, we're going to keep the blinders on. We know that there's other horses in this race, but if we just do our job, when we cross the finishing line, our horse is going to be ahead. And how do you do that? By just keep sawing wood, by staying focused, by going out here and say, who's next? And the Rams, that's what's on your schedule. That's what's next on your agenda. You just got to go take care of business.
One dynamic about this game, or one kind of underlying theme that I think is interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on it, is the fact that the 49ers are a pretty veteran and experienced group. I think they're 22nd in the NFL as far as average age. And we know a lot of those guys have gone into deep postseason runs, have had lots of experience in the playoffs. Some of them have been to the Super Bowl in 2019. Meanwhile, the Rams, I think because of McVay, Stafford, and Aaron Donald, that kind of triumvirate at the top, we associate them with being older. But this is the second youngest group in the NFL as far as average age, 25 years,
Wow.
0.3. This is a team that is very new to a lot of people. And when you're looking at a couple of guys, for example, on defense, their linebacking core, the combination of Byron Young along with Christian Rosenboom
Right.
on the inside. These are guys that are third round this 2023 picks. Those are guys that played well against Seattle. But how will they respond against the big bad 49ers that are coming into town? When you kind of look at teams, low, and you see a young group like the Rams, is that a team you feel like is dumb enough to think they can win this football game, or it's a team that you expect a veteran group like the 49ers to try and step on their throats early?
Well, I think it's both. The 49ers, a veteran group, saying we're going to take advantage of them. What are they going to do? They're going to say, hey, look, we got a guy named McCaffrey. We're going to line up. We're going to motion him out and see who goes with him. Is it the Mike linebacker? Is it the Sam linebacker? Who's going to go with him? And now we're going to see if we can create that mismatch. Okay, now we got Juszczyk out there. He's going to come in there and think he's going to thump, and we're going to slip Juszczyk right down the middle on that little post route that he runs some often at times, because they're looking, anticipating, okay, I want to be physical. I'm going to set the tone and show Cal Juszczyk I'm going to blow him up. So look for Kyle Shanahan to have those little wrinkles in the offense where you're trying to get those guys out in coverage. Look for some play action where their eyes go into backfield because they are young backers and they want to get downhill. They want to set a new line of scrimmage and be physical. Look for Shanahan to say, look, I'm going to have those guys that start flowing downhill, and look, we're going to bring the tight end Kittle going to come pop right in that opening that they just created. So you're going to be, as an older veteran team like you're alluding to, they're going to try to come after them and say, we're going to make these guys make mistakes. On the defensive side, when you're saying, well, is the Rams good enough to think that they're just, yes. When you're a young team like that, you're like, look, I don't care. We just went and took care of Seattle. Everyone's talking about this big, bad Niner team. No one gives us a chance. That's the rallying call. They're not giving us a chance. We're going to come out here. We're going to hit them. We're going to thump them. We're going to show them that we're young, but we're aggressive, and we're going to fly around. McVay is telling them, hey, if you make a mistake, I don't care if you make a mistake. Do it full speed. You hit guys. And so that's the mentality. So, yes to both your questions, both these teams. That's what their calling card is. Shanahan is going to try to out-scheme and say, I'm going to go after these linebackers. This is a young team. They haven't seen the speed of us. They don't understand what's going on. And the Rams, there's going to be, let's make this physical. Yeah. Let's show them that we can play with them.
And we got one more segment coming up next. That is Lorenzo Neal. Evan Giddings with you here. The kickoff show on 95.7 The Game. Make sure to tune in after the final whistle between the 49ers and the Rams, because we get overtime. All your game day coverage here on 95.7 The Game. At the conclusion of the game, it's going to be Mark Grandy, Sterling Bennett, Alan Stiles with your post-game coverage for the 49ers and the Rams Week 2 NFL. Who will be 2-0? Who will be 1-1? One final segment on the other side. Who has to play big for the 49ers to win? Who has to play big for the Rams to upset the 49ers? Who wins and why? All of that on the other side. Our final segment on the kickoff show. Evan Giddings and Lorenzo Neal with you on 95.7 The Game.
So, what are you reading?
I'm checking out the ratings on the new TVs, and it looks like Samsung, LG, and Sony got the best scores.
Just like last year. What about those new high dynamic range TVs?
They got the highest scores of all.
30 minutes away from kickoff.
Up in here, y'all gonna make me go all out. You don't know about that, E. You don't know nothing about that, dog.
That's not DMX. That's Lorenzo
Come
Neal.
on, bro. You don't know about that. That part.
That's what they're playing in the locker room right now at SoFi Stadium.
Oh, they're getting hyped right now. I'm starting to feel it, E. I'm starting to feel it.
49ers faithful getting ready to lose their minds.
Okay, up in here.
We'll see.
In here.
And this is what I'm looking forward to, man, because we're still early in the season enough. Everyone's got big-time aspirations. Everyone's got big-time expectations for these 49ers. But can they lock it in against a division foe? Week 2, NFC West, 49ers, Rams. That's what we're going to see. And I want to get back to that in a sec, Lo. But, we were kind of tossing this out during the break. And I love running just football by you because you got it on lock. You got KPIX, fifth quarter after the 49ers game. Can catch him there.
Check me out.
And so, when we're talking about what is for real right now in the NFC, the three teams we're going to cycle between are obviously the 49ers and then the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. When I ask you what is for real about the other two, the Cowboys and the Eagles, you say what to that?
First thing you say, what's for real about the Dallas Cowboys? I'm going to tell you what's for real, and it's not a joke. It's not something that's been hyped up, and everyone's just like, oh, I'm going to jump on that wagon because that's just a wagon to jump on. How about them Cowboys defense? If you told me what's for real about them, I would say offense entertains, and I always tell you, E, that defense wins championships. And right now, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, for me, I'll give them the slight edge as far as defense. When you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, you say, what jumps out? What makes you think about Philly? Why can they be a contender and not a pretender? I'll tell you what it is. It's the ability to run the ball. They got running backs, that Jalen Hurts, how he rides those guys in there. I think their offense is their strong point. They showed a little inconsistent at times, but when you saw last week, they cranked it up on Thursday night, what they were able to do to Minnesota. Yeah, gave Minnesota, let them back in the game, but I like the way they run the ball. I think that they are the truth as far as running that ball.
And I think San Francisco is the most balanced of the three teams, but you're absolutely right because Dallas last year set the total team sack record. I think the way they're looking right now, they might be able to one-up themselves this season. They got 7 in week 1 against Daniel Jones, had a pressure rate north of 50%. They were in the backfield the entire game. I don't know if they'll be able to replicate that this week against a Jets team that, even though they lost their quarterback, still has some stuff to offer. But as far as the Eagles are concerned, the way I look at them, it's like they're like a French Revolution infantry unit because they got one volley. You got... up front, you're looking at Jalen Hurts, who can run the football. You can put it into Bart Scott's hands. You can put it into Rashad Penny's hands. Now you can put it into DeAndre Swift's hands. And with that offensive line that has been one of the best in the NFL the last 2 years, I don't even and if you want to throw the football, you also got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside. So
AJ.
What is for real about the Eagles to me is their offense. I have some questions about their defense, and that could be the difference between them and San Francisco right now. I think with Dallas, it is absolutely, you are 100% right. It is that Dallas D where everything is bigger, and right now San Francisco has the upper hand on offense. So right now, it's interesting to me to look at those three teams in the NFC and say who's got the edge in what area. And right now, San Francisco kind of seems to be in that sweet spot between them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm in the same church, same pew, and I'll let you sit on my lap because I think that the San Francisco 49ers, I think that they're the most consistent out of those three. When you talk about the Dak Prescotts and that Dallas Cowboy offense, I see imperfection. I see lack of consistency. When you're talking about the Niners, I see a consistent offense because you got a guy by the name of Purdy and what he's able to do and how he distributes the ball because he wants to get the ball out of his hands quick. That's why I give them an edge over the Dallas Cowboys. But when you talk about Philadelphia, I'm with you. I thought they had one of the better drafts this year as far as defensively going out and getting guys in that draft.
Yeah, Jalen Carter's a beast.
Oh, Jalen Carter's a beast. But they doesn't seem like they're starting to gel yet. Doesn't seem like that defense is in sync yet. When you look at the Niners, their defense is in sync. They're playing well already. So it looks like that they give them the edge there. But when you're talking about that offense on Philadelphia, they can hurt you in the run. They can hurt you by air. And they're kind of comparable to the Niners. But when that run game, when you have Jalen Hurts riding, the end crashes down. He gives. The running backs know how to pick their way. They're physical. They're big. The offensive line, you got to give an advantage to Philadelphia. I hate to say it, but the Philadelphia offensive line, in my opinion, is the better of the lines, better line than San Francisco 49ers. Now, McCaffrey is that X factor. We know what he can do.
Yeah.
So when you look at these teams, I think right now, just in week 1, it's a long season. I know we're putting the cart before the horse, E, but I'm just kind of fired up. So right now, though, I think consistently in week 1, thus far, you would have to give the Niners the slight edge.
Well, and this is going to be interesting because I'm with you. I do think that on paper, and the Eagles' offensive line has proved a little bit more, even going back to last season, than the Niners. But if each and every week you get a test of a top-tier pass rusher, for example, last week, you could say Colt McKivitz didn't pass the test, right? T.J. Watt had 3 sacks, got to the backfield, got to Purdy, but they won the football game. They dominated everywhere else that they needed to. This week, you get Aaron Donald. You get the $31 million man, the one that Nick Bosa just went and got more bread for over the top of the AAV. So right now, can the interior of the San Francisco 49ers offensive line stand up against Donald? They've done it in the regular season. He has not got a sack his last 4 games against them. In the playoffs, of course, he got to the backfield. He got to Jimmy Garoppolo. Can they keep Purdy upright? And I do think if we're talking about and comparing offensive lines, I am going to learn something about the San Francisco 49ers O-line today because I hope it looks better. At least it looks more sure of themselves than it did last week against a guy like T.J. Watt. Now you get Aaron Donald.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Niners are going to have to do. You line up and you say, we got to frustrate Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's a guy that plays with a lot of emotions, and he likes beating guys one-on-one, and he knows he can, and he takes advantage of them all the time. And that's what I want to see. Can they take advantage of Aaron Donald and put pressure on him to make him come unglued? Because Aaron Donald's been known to lose his cool because he's getting pushed around. He doesn't like it. He's one of those guys that hates to be manhandled. In the 49ers game plan today, you're going to double him. You're going to put a hat on a hat. And always saying, if everything being equal, all things being equals, players are going to make plays. Coach's job is to make a decision to help determine the outcome of the game. That's why you double team him. Because if you just leave Aaron Donald one-on-one with any of those guys, he's going to win most of those battles, and he's going to put your team, and he's going to make more plays. That's why your coach says, no, we are going to double team him. We're going to act like chip him with the back. That's what you do to make sure you change the outcome of the game. You block him, you double him, and you wear him out. And I think that's what's going to be the Niners' game plan today is to say, let's wear Aaron Donald out. We can't let him deter our offense. So I think that you're going to see a heavy dose of running at Aaron Donald and chipping him and blocking him.
Well, and real quick, Lo, because I know you got your eyes on the entire NFL. Like, we're talking about the NFC, it's
Sure.
top heavy, but the AFC, I know you guys get into on KPIX, fifth quarter, catch Lorenzo Neal there after the 49ers game. But when you're looking at teams that the 49ers might have to potentially look down the line at, not only, of course, on their schedule, but as we're evaluating the best teams in the NFL, who do you think from the AFC kind of stood out to you? And I know that Kansas City's probably going to get its stuff together. You know, the Bengals might get themselves together. The Bills bounce back today against the Raiders. But who kind of, like, where do your eyes gravitate towards in the AFC?
Well, I think that you have to look at a team. You think we'll be saying this? How about them Browns? The Cleveland Browns. When you think about the AFC right now, look, I don't think there's not a dominant team in the AFC. I think there's a bunch of good teams. I don't think it's dominant teams in the AFC. You think about what Cleveland was able to do, week 1, you say, okay, this is Cleveland playing against a Cincinnati team you think is going to be pretty good. But although Cincinnati's losing, today against Baltimore, you still got to say Cleveland played pretty well against them and pretty much dominated the game. I don't think in the AFC it's as clear who's the dominant team in the AFC. I don't see a clear dominant AFC team that you can say, God, I think that they're going to be there because I don't think Kansas City right now, they just look a little unstable. I know they didn't have Kelsey last week. He's back now. But I don't look at the AFC right now as dominant teams. I see a bunch of good teams, and I don't see domination yet.
I think that's a really good point, Lo, because entering this year, and I think it's because of how many of the best quarterbacks are in the AFC. Obviously, Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert,
right?
Even Tua put on a big show in week 1 against the Chargers. So a lot of the top flight signal callers remain in the AFC.
Agreed.
But those teams, if you look at their roster, you look at the 3 phases in which they put together, they are far more flawed, I believe, than the San Francisco 49ers, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Dallas Cowboys. And to me, that's where if you're a 49ers fan and you're feeling good about what the team is, of course, doing on the field, but also with kind of taking that bird's eye view of the rest of the league, the 49ers have to be feeling like if they, of course, can stack these W's, if they can put themselves in position to compete for down the line, that the AFC is not looking as juggernaut-ish as we all expected it to.
No question. It's going to be health. For the 49ers, simply, it comes down to health. Because if you lose Nicky Bosa, your season, it's going to change. If you lose Armstead, it's going to change. The Niners can't afford to lose big time players. They can afford some injuries because every team's going to have them.
Yeah.
But when it comes November and December and January and the playoffs and stuff starts, you want to make sure your team, you have your weapons. If the Niners are healthy, like everyone else, and all things being equal, I think you have to like the Niners' chances if this team stays healthy. But the biggest thing for this team, in my opinion, is health. And guess what? That's what it was last year, E.
Yeah, and look, if you're basically, if the training staff is the one that's waging war, not the players, we can have that because that tells you that the talent, that the overall production on this team is where it's supposed to be, and that's at the top of the NFL. Before we get to the 49ers, what we think they need to do to win, I am curious because we do have to talk about, where the Rams, what they did last week was impressive. Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, Aaron Donald. To you, Lorenzo Neal, what do you think that the Rams need to do if they want to have a chance to win this game? If they want to upset the 49ers, how do you think the Rams find a way to win this game?
I think you jump on them. I think if you're the Rams, you look at this Niner team, you say, how are we going to find some mismatches? You heard JD come on and he said, hey, where does the Niners struggle? In the slot. I go right away, I go in the slot. I go over 3-by-3, make sure I got my 3 wide receivers or 4 wide receivers out there, and I put someone in the slot and say, let's see how they're going to adjust to this. Are they going to drop a backer into that and try to go cover up a zone and try to get the ball out of our hands? If so, is my running back going to be able to make plays? How am I going to, when they go vacate an area, to go try to say, I'm going to stop the slot position. I'm going to make sure that someone's in there. They're going to try to bracket that. If that's where they're going to do, where else am I going to find and exploit? If the Niners are going to try to take away that slot, that means the running back and add the passing game is going to have make some hay. So it's like if you're the Rams, you're saying, can we run the ball? We have to keep the Niners honest. We have to be able to run the ball. Can we get to the edges on certain plays? Can we run screens? Can we do those bubble screens so we can get the ball out? It's just like a run. I will think you'll see the Rams run some sweeps, some jet sweeps, get to the perimeter, and then some misdirection. Because if you let the Niners pin their ears back, they can wreck shop.
Well, and one note from that perspective, the fact that Cam Akers, their starting running back week 1, their RB1, deactivated for week 2. So Kyron Williams, who had 2 touchdowns last week on the road in Seattle, is going to be their starting back. Meanwhile, for the 49ers, not many injuries to update you with. Kind of a similar list as last week. Everyone appears to be healthy. That matters, so that is good. And, of course, that is a key for Lorenzo Neal for success this season. The 49ers winning the health game. But I do think that, to me, Lo, if the Rams are to somehow upset the 49ers, and I don't believe that they will, it's got to be on the back of Matthew Stafford. Or I should say on the right arm of Matthew Stafford, because he has to be incredible in this game, to me, for them to even have a chance. I think potentially if there's a turnover battle to win, the Rams also have to win that as well. To me, even if it's even, if there's less possessions or as many possessions for the Rams as there is for the 49ers, they're in trouble. So Stafford would be 1, the turnover battle would be 2, and Sean McVay has got to, I think he's got to pull something out of his bag against Kyle Shanahan that he hasn't had before, because Shanahan's got that 9-4 record over him in the regular season.
If the Rams throw for 250, 80 yards, and let's just say 80, 90 yards rushing, no way? You give them no chance?
I think they might lose by a touchdown.
I'm with you. If the Rams if the Rams throw for 350, what is the number in your opinion? The stat, because I'm going to tell you, for me, it's over 300. If he throws for less than 300 yards, they will not beat the Niners. Only way, if he throws for under 300 yards, they would have had over 100, over 140 yards rushing. If the only way the Rams can win this game, Matthew Stafford has to throw for 300 or plus. And they still have to have over 80 yards rush. If he just throws for 300, they have 70, 80 yards, they didn't win. They are going to have to run for over 100 less, and he throws for 400 yards and then 60 or 70 yards wins far as for the Rams. But Matthew Stafford, like you just alluded to, they have to be great. He has to be great if they're going to have a chance.
No, I'm with you. And it's interesting you mentioned the rushing, because to me, if the Rams want to even have a way in this game, it's got to be McCaffrey under 100 yards on the ground. And that is something I do not think is going to happen, because as we transition to what the 49ers need to do, the keys to victory for this game in week 2 against the Rams, to me, I think you could go a bevy of ways of what you think the 49ers have to do. I think that defensively, the number for me is 3 sacks. I think if they get to Stafford in the backfield 3 times, and I should say maybe the the amount of pressures more so hovering around double digits. If they're in the backfield, especially early against Stafford, a guy who I think is probably going to have to drop back 40 to 50 times in this game, they're going to be in positions to win. And then for me, number 23, a total of 25 total touches and over 100 yards on the ground. That to me spells an automatic letter W for the 49ers.
Yeah, and for me, it's not even about McCaffrey having 100 yards rushing, because if McCaffrey has friggin' 75 yards rushing,
that's a good point, yeah.
And if he has 75 yards through the air,
and he also might throw for a touchdown like he did last year.
And that's the thing that makes this team so dangerous. And like you alluded to, because McCaffrey is so dangerous out of the backfield in the passing game, it's 3rd and 3. And guess what? The biggest thing is 3rd down. If you can convert that 3rd down to a 1st down, you got 4 more plays. So if McCaffrey on 3rd down, 3rd and 2, now because they got young linebackers, you can exploit that and say, okay, he gets the 1st down. Now he does it again. And even though it's like 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, it doesn't matter if he doesn't have, 200-300 yards because of the fact he has the chain moving. And now Ayuk can go for 90, 80. Kittle's capable of going for 75 to 100. Debo's capable between run and pass to getting 80 or 90. You got 4 guys between Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo. Mm-hmm. If you look at those 3 guys, just Kittle, Ayuk, and Debo, if I told you 180, would you take the under or over?
I'd take the over.
Thank you. But this is
together, right? Not individually.
Right. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So if I said 200, under or over, see what I mean? When you have that type of dynamic, so I got 3 guys that's giving you 200 yards.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the backfield. If I said, hey, look, are the under or over 100 yards rushing? If you said McCaffrey, you're like, you might say, I'd like to see that. I don't know if you'll take it. But if I said 100 yards over and under for the running backs collectively, you're going over.
Yeah.
You see, so right there, that's just 300-400 yards just with receivers and running backs. So that's why I like the chances, because like we talked about, what we talked about in last segment, it was the Niners collectively, they're the most balanced team. That's what you like about them. And so now you translate that over to offense. That's what I love about them, because you got to have heroic efforts from Stafford. The Niners, you don't have to have that from Purdy.
Yeah.
Because they're so balanced.
Yeah, there's a reason David generally does not take down Goliath, because, because the 49ers are right now looking like juggernauts. I know we got a couple minutes left here, Lo, so I want to get your prediction for this football game. Do you think the 49ers, final score for this game, Week 2, 49ers, Rams both 1-0. Who's going to be 2-0, and what's the final score going to be?
I think it's something like 28 or more, but I think the 28 is that's, if you said, will the 49ers score 28 points, I would bet that yes. I think it's 28-17. I don't think the Rams have enough firepower, especially without having Cooper Kupp and not having the dominant run game. So I think that it's 17. I don't think the Rams can score over, 17, 18 points.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think the 49ers, and again, Brock Purdy has only not scored 30 or more points in the regular season once. That was when he was playing with a broken rib in Seattle. So I think 30 is the number. 21 would be the magic number. I think the game's over. The Niners can get there. But I think the Niners, as much as they have done offensively with both Brock Purdy and McCaffrey, continue to roll. The final score that I'll go with will be 49ers 33, Rams 16. I think this game is not in doubt. I think they established themselves early, and I think later on in the 5th quarter on KPIX, Low,
yes,
you're talking about a 2-0 team.
Absolutely. I'm with you. Same church, same crew. Let's go Niners, but I just want to see this team come out and stay consistent. And let us come back next week and say, hey, this is what they did. They're staying the course, understanding what's at stake. It's about the Lombardi Trophy. This team has been to NFC Championships games. It's been to Super Bowl, been to the Super Bowl. But in this era, in this tenure, what has been the biggest thing? It's getting over the hump and getting to the Super Bowl. So they've been knocking at heaven's door, and they just want to get in.
Yes, and look, they are a chance. Just to say, this is the second step for them to get to that place where they can get in. And I think that going through a divisional opponent this early in the game, second game on the road, by the way, and then, of course, they come home for the home opener on Thursday, is a great test for them. Lo, I know that next week you're going to be with Larry, talking at the Hilton before the game, but I have had a ton of fun chopping it up with you, man. And for the next road game, I look forward to it, because these Niners, I don't know. Looking this first month of the season, don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
I get it.
But this
I
is
get it.
lining up to be a special team.
It really is. Bang, bang, Niner gang. And they understand what's at stake. The fans understand. And I think the greatest thing about this fan base and this players and this community, the Niners organization, is everyone understands what's at stake and where they want to go. And for the first time every year, we understand the Niners' goal is the Super Bowl. But this is that year. They are, in the back of their mind, they're thinking Super Bowl or bust, barring injuries.
No doubt. And lock in, by the way, after the final whistle, overtime here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Grandy, Sterling Bennett, and Alan Stiles got you covered with all of your post-game red and gold. They got sound reaction, everything you need. 888-957-9570. It will be the number for you to call in to chime in. But that has been the kickoff show here on 95.7 The Game. A big thank you to Lorenzo Neal, of course, my co-host. Big thank you to Craig Valentino holding things down in the production booth. My name is Evan Giddings saying so long, and make sure to tune into overtime after the game, all right here on 95.7 The Game.
Holla.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years, like one of the top-rated Samsung, LG, or Sony models? Too expensive? What if you could get up to $1,000 trade-in for your old set? Who would do a stupid deal like this? Right now, at Video Only, you can get big bucks for your old set as a trade-in and a hot price on the new models. Don't be sorry. Check out Video Only.
At Bank of